You know that feeling when you're at the checkout and something costs way more than you expected? That sick feeling in your stomach when the bill comes. Well, let me tell you something that might keep you up at night. If you're not careful with your money, you're literally paying double for almost everything in your life. I'm not exaggerating here. I've seen this pattern over and over again, and today I'm going to break down exactly why this happens and what it means for your bank account. Think about this for a second. When you were younger, maybe in your 20s or 30s, you could bounce back from financial mistakes pretty easily. You had time, you had energy. You could always work a little extra, pick up overtime, or start something new and watch it grow. But somewhere along the way, things changed. Now we're in our 40s, 50s, or beyond, and suddenly time isn't just money anymore. Time is everything. And when you waste money, you're not just losing dollars, you're losing something that you absolutely cannot get back. Here's what most people don't realize. Being broke is expensive. This isn't some clever wordplay or motivational nonsense I'm throwing at you. This is actual, measurable reality that plays out in dollars and cents. When you don't have money, when you're living paycheck to paycheck or barely scraping by, you end up spending more money on basic things than someone who has financial cushion. It's one of the cruelest ironies of life, and once you understand it, you'll see it everywhere. Let me start with something simple that affects almost everyone: debt. When you're broke and you need something, what do? You put it on credit. Maybe it's a car repair you can't avoid, medical bills you didn't expect, or just groceries because your paycheck hasn't come yet. You swipe that card, and suddenly you've got debt. But here's where the real damage happens. That item you bought for $100? If you're paying it off with credit card interest at 18, 20, or even 25%, that $100 item actually cost you $130, $140, maybe even $150 by the time you finish paying for it. You're paying double. Sometimes you're paying even more than double. Now multiply that across everything you buy. Your groceries are more expensive because you're using credit. Your gas is more expensive. Your clothes are more expensive. Even your rent becomes more expensive in a way because you might not have the cash to secure a better apartment or move somewhere cheaper. Everything costs more when you're broke. And the cruelest part is that poor people and broke people know this in their bones. They live with this reality every single day. But most of them can't do anything about it because they don't have the initial capital to change the situation. Let me give you a real-world example that you've probably experienced yourself. Let's say you need new tires for your car. If you have money in the bank, you can shop around. You can wait for a sale. You can go to different stores, get quotes, and maybe you pay $500 for a decent set of tires. But if you're broke, you can't wait. Your tire blew out and you need to work tomorrow. So you go to the closest tire shop and they charge you $700 for basically the same tire because they know you have no choice. You're desperate, and desperation is expensive. The same thing happens with housing. If you have good credit and some money for a down payment, you can get a mortgage at 3% interest. But if you're broke and your credit is shot because of past financial problems, you're renting. And not just renting. You're renting from someone who knows you don't have options. Your rent is higher than a mortgage would be. You're paying a landlord every month instead of building equity in your own home. Over 20 years, someone with a mortgage at 3% might pay $300,000 total for a house worth $500,000. You, being broke, pay $500,000 in rent for nothing. You don't own it. You never will. And then what happens when you're 65 or 70? You still need a place to live, but now you've got no equity, no asset, nothing. This is the math of being broke. It doesn't just hurt you today, it compounds and destroys your future. Let's talk about groceries, because this is something that hits everyone, and the difference is shocking once you notice it. When you go to the grocery store with money and planning, you buy things on sale. You buy bigger packages because the per-unit cost is way cheaper. You can afford to buy healthier food that might cost a bit more now, but saves you on medical bills later. You can cook at home. But when you're broke, you're buying small packages at premium prices because that's all you can afford right now. You're buying convenience food because you're working 2 jobs and don't have time to cook. That rotisserie chicken costs $7, and sure, it's convenient, but it's also way more expensive than buying a raw chicken and cooking it yourself. You're paying for convenience you can't afford because you don't have the luxury of time. And here's something that really gets me. Poor people often pay more for basic necessities like groceries because they live in food deserts. If you live in a neighborhood without a good supermarket, you're shopping at small convenience stores where everything costs more. You might not even have a car to get to a better store, so you're stuck paying premium prices for lower quality food. Again, you're paying double. Insurance is another place where this happens in a way that most people don't talk about enough. If you're broke and you've had some financial trouble in your past, your credit score is lower. Insurance companies use credit scores to determine your rates. So not only are you struggling financially, but you're also paying more for car insurance, homeowners insurance, and everything else. It's like the system is designed to keep you down. And in some ways it is. There's literally a financial penalty for being poor. Then there's the time cost, which might be the biggest thing nobody talks about. When you're broke, you spend enormous amounts of time dealing with money problems. You're calling creditors, you're trying to figure out how you're going to pay bills, you're working extra hours, you're stressed all the time, which actually makes you less productive and less able to make good decisions. Studies show that financial stress literally reduces your cognitive function. You make worse decisions when you're broke. You're more likely to make impulse purchases. You're more likely to miss opportunities. You're just trying to survive, and surviving takes all your mental energy. Compare this to someone with money. They have a financial advisor, or they can afford to use a simple system to manage their money. They're not stressed. They can think clearly. They can see opportunities and take advantage of them. They can invest time in education or skill development that pays off later. Their brain isn't constantly in crisis mode. So not only do they have more money, but they also have time to think about how to make more money. It compounds in their favor. Now let's talk about something that affects a lot of people in their 40s and beyond: your health. When you're broke, you can't afford preventative health care. You skip the checkups. You don't get tests done. You don't go to the doctor when something small feels wrong. And then suddenly you're 60 years old and you've got diabetes or heart problems or something worse because you never went to the doctor when you could have caught it early. Now you're spending thousands of dollars a month on medication and medical bills that could have been prevented with a few $100s in checkups 20 years ago. You're definitely paying double. Maybe you're paying 10 times as much. Poor people die younger. That's not some abstract statistic. That's a fact that affects your actual lifespan. If you don't have money for health care, you don't get preventative medicine, you don't get early treatment, and you die earlier. So being broke literally cost you years of your life. If you could take $1,000 and spend it on preventative medicine now that would prevent 10 years of health problems later, wouldn't that be worth it? But most people who are broke don't have that $1,000, so they suffer instead. Let's look at something that most people think about a lot when they reach our age: retirement. If you're broke, you're not saving for retirement. You might not even have a retirement account. You're just hoping that Social Security will be enough. And let's be honest, it won't be. So you're going to have to work longer. You're going to have to work into your 60s, maybe your 70s. Meanwhile, someone who started saving money in their 20s is probably already semi-retired or thinking about retirement. They're not spending 8 hours a day stressed about money. They're spending time with their grandkids or traveling or doing things they actually want to do. The cost of being broke is your freedom, your future freedom. Here's another angle that really gets under my skin. When you're broke, you often have to use predatory financial services. You take out payday loans at 400% interest. You use check cashing services instead of having a bank account because you can't maintain a minimum balance, and the overdraft fees would destroy you. You pay extra fees for everything because you're using services that prey on poor people. A payday loan for $500 might cost you $600 2 weeks later. You just paid 20% interest in 2 weeks. That's over 1,000% annually. And people do this because they don't have options. They're desperate. Compare this to someone with money who can take out a personal loan at 6% interest. They're borrowing the same $500, but they're paying $30 in interest, not $100. They might pay it back over a year, so they're paying $30 total. You're paying $100. That's being broke, being expensive. Buying a house is probably one of the biggest financial decisions most of us ever make, and it's a perfect example of how being broke costs you double. If you can save up a 20% down payment and you have good credit, you can get a mortgage. Let's say the house costs $300,000. You put down $60,000 as a down payment, and you borrow $240,000 at 4% interest over 30 years. Your monthly payment is around $1,140. Over 30 years, you'll pay about $410,000 total. But you'll own a house worth $300,000, or probably more, because houses appreciate. So really, you're paying $110,000 in interest to own a house. Now imagine you're broke and you can't save a down payment. You can't buy a house. You rent instead. At $3,000 a month in rent, over 30 years, you're paying $1,080,000. You own nothing. You have no asset. You have no equity. You paid 10 times as much money, and you got nothing to show for it except somewhere to sleep. And that's assuming rent stays the same, which it doesn't. Rent usually goes up every year. This is the multiplication effect of being broke. One bad financial decision or situation early on leads to a cascade of expensive situations that compound over time until you're paying multiples of what someone else pays for the same thing. Let me talk about education, because it's huge, especially when you think about your kids or grandkids. If you have money, you can send your kids to good schools. You can pay for college outright, or you can afford to help them pay for it without crushing them with debt. Your kids graduate without debt, and they can start their adult life ahead of the game. But if you're broke, your kids get loans. They graduate with $50,000, $100,000 in debt. They spend their 20s and 30s paying off college instead of saving for their own future. They're stuck. And meanwhile, the rich kid whose parents paid for college is already investing in real estate and building wealth. Here's another one that blows my mind: the price of not having money to fix things when they break. If you don't have emergency savings and your refrigerator breaks, what do? You have to buy a new one with credit. You're charged an extra $200 or $300 for the credit. Meanwhile, someone with money could have bought that same fridge for cash and maybe even haggled down the price a bit. Or if they had a 10-year-old fridge, they could afford to replace it before it broke, so they could get a better deal during a sale. Being broke means dealing with emergencies as emergencies, which costs more. Having money means you can plan ahead and avoid the emergency costs. Let's get into the psychological damage of being broke, because that's real, and it's expensive too. When you're broke and stressed about money, you make worse decisions. You might stay in a job you hate because you can't afford to leave. You might stay in a bad relationship because you don't have the financial independence to leave. You might give up on your dreams because you don't have the capital to chase them. You're trapped. And that trap is expensive in ways that aren't always measurable in dollars, but they're definitely measurable in happiness and life satisfaction. There's also the shame factor. Being broke comes with shame in a way that being rich doesn't. You're ashamed to tell people how much money you make. You're ashamed to decline social invitations because you can't afford to go out. You're ashamed when someone sees you buying discount groceries. You're ashamed when your car breaks down. This shame is toxic. It keeps you isolated. It keeps you from asking for help. It keeps you from building the relationships that might actually help you get out of being broke. And it definitely affects your mental health, which circles back to the healthcare cost problem. Now, I want to talk about something that really matters when you're in your 40s and beyond: the opportunity cost of being broke. Let's say you're a smart person with good ideas, but you're broke. You want to start a business, but you don't have capital. You want to invest in real estate, but you don't have a down payment. You want to go back to school and learn a new skill, but you can't afford the tuition, and you can't afford to not work for a semester or two. Meanwhile, someone with money can take risks. They can start a business, and if it fails, they're okay. They can invest in real estate and build wealth through appreciation. They can go back to school. They have options, and options are worth money. If you don't have options, you're stuck doing whatever pays the bills. And whatever pays the bills is usually not the best paying option, or the most fulfilling option. The irony is that starting a business or investing requires relatively small amounts of money compared to what you might earn if you succeed. You might need $5,000 to start something that could make you $50,000 a year. But if you're broke, that $5,000 feels impossible to get, so you don't try. You work your job, and someone else with $5,000 to spare tries and succeeds. That's the math of being broke. Let me hit you with some numbers that should scare you a little bit. Let's say you're born and you're in a poor family, so you start without financial support. By the time you're 20, you're behind. By the time you're 30, you're even further behind because of compound interest working against you instead of for you. By the time you're 40, our age, you're so far behind that catching up feels impossible. Someone who started with money and made decent decisions is probably a millionaire or close to it. You're still struggling. And the really depressing part is that you're not necessarily less smart or less hardworking. You just started behind. The system is designed to keep you behind. Studies show that if you're born poor in America, you have about a 50% chance of staying poor or becoming poor again, even if you make it to a higher income level temporarily. It's like the system has gravity that keeps pulling you back down. Someone born rich has a 90% chance of staying rich. That's not because rich people are smarter. It's because money makes money. Capital begets capital. The more money you have, the more opportunities you have to make more money. The less money you have, the more expensive everything becomes. Here's something that gets me angry: the fact that this isn't taught in schools. Your kids never learn that being broke is expensive. They never learn about compound interest or how credit works or how the system is stacked against them. So they make the same mistakes their parents made, and the cycle continues. Generation after generation, poor people pay more for everything, while rich people pay less and less. It's completely unfair, and it's completely preventable with just basic financial education. So what's the takeaway here? What's the point of understanding all this? Well, I think the point is that it's important to understand what you're fighting against. If you're broke, you're not just dealing with not having money. You're dealing with a system that makes everything more expensive for you. Every decision is harder. Every option is worse. Every path forward is more expensive. It's important to know this because once you know it, you can start to fight it. The first step is awareness. You have to understand that being broke has a cost that goes way beyond just the money you don't have right now. It costs you your future. It costs you your health. It costs you your freedom. It costs you your time. Once you really understand that, you start to make different decisions. You start to prioritize getting out of the broke cycle because you understand what it's costing you. The second thing is to understand that getting out of being broke doesn't require you to earn more money, at least not immediately. You can earn more money, and you should, but the first thing you need to do is stop the bleeding. You need to stop using credit for everyday purchases. You need to stop paying for convenience you can't afford. You need to start being intentional about money. You need to get a budget and understand exactly where your money is going. This isn't about being cheap or denying yourself things. It's about being smart. Once you stop the bleeding, then you can start saving. Even small amounts of saving, $50 a month, $100 a month, will start to change your life. Because once you have a little bit of money, you have options. You can say no to the predatory payday loan. You can wait for a sale instead of buying at full price. You can afford to shop around. Your money starts working for you instead of against you. Then comes the real game changer: investing. I'm not talking about getting rich quick or buying meme stocks or anything like that. I'm talking about simple, boring index funds or real estate or starting a small business. Once you have even a little bit of capital, you can put it to work making more money. And unlike your salary, which stops when you stop working, capital generates returns while you sleep. This is what separates people who are going to be okay in retirement from people who are going to be broke in retirement, whether or not they have capital working for them. The beautiful thing about understanding all this is that once you really get it, you can change your trajectory. You don't have to be broke forever. You don't have to pay double for everything. But you have to make the choice to change. And you have to understand what you're up against. You have to understand that the system is stacked against you. And that's okay, because knowing that means you can stack the system back in your favor. When you're in your 40s, you're not young anymore, but you're also not done. You've got maybe 30, 40, or 50 years left, if you're lucky. That's a lot of time to build wealth if you start now. That's a lot of time to undo some of the damage that being broke has caused. But you have to start now. Every year you wait is a year you're not saving, not investing, not building. And because of compound interest, every year you wait costs you disproportionately. So here's my challenge to you. Stop accepting that being broke is expensive. Start building financial independence. Start with awareness. Understand your situation completely. Then get a budget. Then start saving. Then start investing. Then keep going. It's not glamorous. It's not quick. But it works. And once you've tasted financial security, once you've felt what it's like to have options, once you've experienced the relief of not worrying about money all the time, you'll understand that it was worth it. Being broke is expensive, but being smart with money is the most affordable thing you can possibly do. That was your friend Clarence Capital. Don't forget, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Check out the next video, how to pass $1 million plus to your kids without ruining them. Wealth transfer secrets. Take care of yourself, your finances, and most importantly, your time. Good luck.